I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. If you are passionate about the craft of professional wrestling and you're never done learning all about it, then you have landed in the exact right place, my friend. Go ahead, join the Till We Make It tribe, subscribe down below, enable notifications so you never miss a vid. And if the hundreds of videos already on this channel aren't enough for you and you need to jam even more wrestling knowledge into your brain, consider joining our community over on Patreon. There you're going to unlock more than 400 exclusive posts. You'll get instant access to our private Discord. Every Tuesday this year, I'm publishing 2 tips as part of my Tidbit Tuesday. They go live at 2:22 p.m. every single Tuesday. And there's a Patreon exclusive video every week that will never appear here on the channel. I just published one about the glut of wrestling content being cranked out of the corporate sports entertainment machine right now, and I'm working on one for next week about the failure of anti-heroes in pro wrestling. You can be part of it for as little as $5 a month. Today, I want to examine the purpose of running a double heat. You know what I mean by that? A double heat occurs when there are 2 obstacles introduced into the narrative, into the story of a match, instead of just one. And an obstacle could be something that is as easy to imagine as one wrestler's arm is injured. That body part is imperiled for the story of the match, and then that colors everything that comes after. But don't get hung up on the idea that it must be body part centric. That's just one of many obstacles that could be explored throughout a pro wrestling match. Here's another. If a foreign object is suddenly introduced into the match, that object itself becomes the obstacle. The obstacle could be baked into the values of the wrestlers. For example, if one wrestler can't even lift the other off of their feet, that is the obstacle in the narrative. And the obstacle creates a blockade between the protagonist, the hero or babyface of the match, and their objective, which in most cases is as simple as pinning their opponent, making them submit. But in certain specialty matches, the objective may not be to pin or submit the opponent. It could be to escape a cage, just as one example. A double heat means there are 2 obstacles instead of the traditional one, which begs the question, why would you do this? In today's video, I'm going to share with you 3 examples of the effective deployment of a double heat in a pro wrestling match. But before we break those open, would you take a moment and leave a like-a-palooza on today's video for me? It really does help the channel to grow. It signals to YouTube that they should share these videos with more and more people. It's called the engagement signal, I understand, and it does make a difference. Thanks for doing that. It's important to understand the function of Act 2, the heat, within 3-act structure, the most common storytelling structure, not just in wrestling, but in movies and graphic novels, TV shows, etc. It's in Act 2 that we must introduce an obstacle for the babyface, the hero character, to struggle against, and then overcome during the climactic scene. That's Act 3 of a wrestling match. Now, yes, you can compose wrestling matches that are nothing more than spectacle. They're spectacular moves only. But if you want good matches to become epic matches, you've got to make sure the story underneath those moves is rock solid. And that includes the introduction of an obstacle in Act 2. A double heat occurs when we introduce 2 separate obstacles. Remember that without an obstacle, without something to struggle against en route to obtaining victory, that win will feel meaningless. A win without struggle delivers no catharsis to the audience, and yet that is the exact thing they all crave. Okay, let's start with an example which is probably the easiest to imagine. A singles match in which a babyface is against a heel. What's the point of a double heat here? Well, you can probably readily imagine putting 2 separate heats on the babyface so that there are more storytelling elements in play. There are more obstacles. You're not wrong about that. But there is also a rare scenario in which One of the heats will be focused on the heel, while the other is focused on the babyface. And I already hear some of you asking, Mike, why on earth would you ever heat up a heel? And although it is rare, here's an example of why you might make that choice. In a situation where the heel is coming into the match with a real pre-existing injury that cannot be masked from the audience, you're going to have to acknowledge it and use it to make your story better. And a way in which you can do that is by making the first heat about the heel, specifically to put that injury in play, so they don't have to keep hiding it for the balance of the match. If it's going to become obvious anyway, you might as well use it in your story. That first heat, though, the one focusing on the heel, that needs to be more of an active, dynamic heat. Whereas later on, when the heat is on the babyface, that needs to feel more like a stalking heat. And if these concepts are brand new to you, don't worry. Stick around to the end of today's video. I've got something for you. But take it from me. If you're going to make this move, where the first heat is about the heel and the second heat is about the babyface, don't ever decide to just randomly flip them and make the babyface's heat come first. That will pay no dividends for you, I guarantee it. Now granted, a scenario in which you're going to heat up the heel of the match, that's exceedingly rare, but it does happen from time to time. For a beautiful example, watch the WWF title match between Bret the Hitman Hart and the late great Razor Ramon from Royal Rumble 1993. But what is far more common is that you will run two independent heats introducing two separate obstacles against a babyface. But to harken back to the title of today's video, what's the point of a double heat? Well, here's an example. Let's say that you've got 10 minutes of material about the left arm. All your arm drags and your arm bars and everything else, it's about 10 minutes of material. And then you look at the lineup and see you've been assigned to wrestle for 45 minutes. How on earth are you going to fill those 45 minutes with 10 minutes of left arm material? There is no amount of stalling, chicanery, or other shenanigans that are going to get you to 45 minutes if you've only got 10 minutes of heat. So, maybe after a flurry, a false comeback, some other connective tissue that holds them together, you're going to move right into a second heat. And here you'll introduce a completely separate obstacle for the babyface to struggle against. And then you got to carry both of those forward into the climax, into Act 3. And this requires a deft hand, both as a wrestler and as a storyteller, so that you never ignore the obstacles you put in play when you're getting to the finish. Every time I am filming Until We Make It for you, there are helicopters overhead. I don't know if the microphone ever picks it up, but there's always helicopters. I don't know why. Example number 2. What's the point of a double heat in a tag team match? Well, this can be pretty straightforward. This gives both heels an opportunity to heat up both baby faces so that they each have something to struggle against heading into Act 3. If one baby face has their leg taken out during their heat and the other has their neck injured during theirs, they've each got something to sell while trying to win the match. They both have an obstacle they're going to need to overcome in order to win. This can absolutely be used to heighten the drama in the third act of a match. And it is a great way to frame any babyface tag team as the underdogs, regardless of the size, shape, or experience level of the heels they're wrestling against.
There should be a video clip here, but I guess I deleted it. I don't know. Nevertheless, example number 3. What's the point of a double heat in a face versus face match? Well, these are always tricky to navigate, but running a double heat may insulate against the audience turning one wrestler heel because they crave that face versus heel dynamic. And most audiences, especially here in the West, they do want that. They want a good guy to cheer for and a bad guy to root against. And for many of our customers, that dynamic is part of the fun of going to see a live wrestling card. So even if both characters are meant to be baby faces, in the broader context of a promotion's booking plan, the audience may force one of the faces onto the heel side of the fence. But when both babies take a heat, it allows the audience to sympathize with each of them and then seeing each of them struggle against their respective obstacles allows them to become emotionally invested in the fight.
While I can't say this will work for you 100% of the time under all circumstances, I can tell you that allowing each babyface in a face versus face match to have their own heat, for the audience to get emotionally invested in their struggle to overcome their own obstacle, can insulate against them defaulting to the face versus heel dynamic. And I can assure you that if one face takes all of the heat, the audience more times than not will make up their mind that the aggressor, the one putting the heat on the other, is the heel, and they will react accordingly. If a robust understanding of the function of the 3 acts of a wrestling match is the exact thing that will take your good matches and make them epic, then you need my book, 7 Keys to Becoming a Better Performer, right now. It's waiting for you over on Amazon or as an audiobook that I narrate myself over on Audible. And if you need to crack open 2 different kinds of heat, as I alluded to before, here's a video you need to watch next so you can keep on learning. And I want to shout out some of my newest patrons, like Jeremy and Sean B. Your patronage really does mean a lot. Thank you both.